Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wargamer of Kent. Now in today's video I wanted to do something slightly different and talk through what it's like to run a wargaming tournament, in my case a bolt action tournament, to talk through what it was like myself as a tournament organiser, a TO, how I constructed the tournament to be more friendly focused than competitive, but also then some tips and tricks for yourselves if you were interested in running a bolt action tournament specifically, or maybe a different sort of tournament or game day. Some like tips to things to consider and how that can help you run your event. So what was my event like? It was ran yesterday. It was Operation Littleborn 2 Autumn Assault, held in a village hall just outside of Canterbury in Kent in the UK. We originally provisioned to have 18 players, but for reasons I'll come on to later, we had 14 people on the day, 3 games of bolt action per person, and in the end, everyone gets a prize. Most sporting, first place, second place, third place, and best army were just reasons to get on the top of the queue to grab a prize. That way, if everyone got a prize, I hope to kind of reduce the competitiveness, encourage some newer people to the game, rather than it being a very focused event for experienced players, because I think that's already catered for. And the event was a massive success. Everyone had a really good time. I had a great time myself, even I didn't even roll a single dice or play a game, but just seeing all these great boards and armies and battling it out and all the good stories to tell. So I think there's actually 3 key things to consider if you wanted to run your own event. So now this Operation Littleborn was the second one. I've run 2 events this year, both bolt action. The first one had 12 players. This one provisioned for 18 and 14, but still slightly growing. So the 3 areas are players, the venue, and terrain. So now I'm going to go through each one of them, speak generally and then specifically how it worked for Operation Littleborn. So, starting with players, you can't have a tournament if you've got no one to play in it. Now, I'm speaking here for games that have a considerable player base, enough to run an event, but perhaps not your kind of Warhammer 40,000s, your massive ones where you know that there'll be people in the local area. So to start off with, I think it's really good to identify a kind of key, reliable player base that you know, worst comes to worst, they will turn up. In my head, I always think you need 8 players to run a tournament. That way, everyone will play someone new each time. And the way I did that was at my weekly gaming club. I've got a group of mates. I think there's about 6 of us in total who play bolt action fairly regularly. And I knew that there was 4 or 5 people in the local area who perhaps can't make the weekly event, but would definitely come down. So that way I knew there was a guaranteed player base. I also had the fortunate evidence base of the first tournament, knowing that that sold out as well. So there was plenty of appetite and opportunity. I mean, speaking for bolt action, since the 3rd edition, lots of people are getting into it. It's really a growing game and lots of people are interested. So pretty easy to get that player base in, but you have to make sure you've got that core bit. The worst thing you want to do is book a venue, kind of put down some money for some prizes, and then only have 4 people sign up. So that's not what you want. So moving on to the next one, which is the venue. You need a lot of space to host the tournament, and speaking in the southeast of UK, where space is a bit of a premium, you need to find somewhere where you can rent out for an entire day on a weekend that will have all the tables and the right amenities, parking, toilets, etc., but for a reasonable price. Now, I'm lucky enough that the Littleborn Village Hall is a lovely little community hall that can be hired out for an incredibly reasonable price. We book it out once a month for our gaming club to run different events or just general gaming days. So I knew that that wasn't going to cost too much and I could factor that in. That meant with charging £15 for a ticket, I would be able to pay for the venue and then make sure with a bit of free prize support from Warlord, which I'll also get onto, was able to make sure that every player would get a prize, and thus kind of creating that environment where it wouldn't be too competitive. But maybe look at, I know for larger events, people have hosted it in primary school halls, for instance, kind of that big hall setting where you can get lots of players in a lot of space. You don't necessarily want it too cramped. And another thing to think about as well is maybe public transport links. That's why I hosted the event on a Saturday rather than a Sunday, because it was far more easy to get to the event. We had a couple of individuals who came by public transport, one all the way from London, so it's actually about a 2-hour journey. So really good to see that that's still doable for them. And then the final area is terrain. Now, I also mean the buildings and mats, but also tables and boards. So Bolt Action is played on a 6x4, so I knew that we were going to need, for the 18 players, 9 tables, 9 sets up of terrain, but also we use 4x2 MDF pieces to create a kind of flat playing surface on the tables in the hall. So I needed to make sure that we had enough of them, 27 of them to be exact. The handy thing was, for Bolt Action, I feel the community is really good at supplying their own terrain. Lots of people have created really great looking boards that they don't necessarily have the chance to use all the time. They might not necessarily have the space at home to get it out on the kitchen table. So the tournament offered a really good opportunity for them to bring those boards. And I'm really glad we did, because I think those of you that go to a War Games club know that club terrain can get a bit battered. It's, put in a box every week and kind of thrown around a little bit. Didn't look the best. I had it there as a reserve so I could make sure that every table would have terrain. But in the end, all of the tables, as you'll see from the footage and the pictures that I'll show in this video, was brought by individuals and players from the community, and they looked fantastic. I think as a miniature wargamer, for me, one of the big things is, but we want to play on a really gorgeous looking table, even if it's a sort of not a very competitive game, but playing in that kind of tournament environment, because that's where the enjoyment comes. If it wasn't for figures and terrain, I'd just be a board gamer. So those are the 3 key areas to consider. I think if you've considered all 3 of those and you've ticked all those boxes, you're absolutely ready to run your tournament. So now I want to talk about Operation Littleborn 2 Autumn Assault, how it went, and just a general little report for everyone. So, as I mentioned earlier, the tournament I hosted, Operation Littleborn 2, was a 3-game, 1-day event where the kind of core thing was everyone gets a prize. So, kind of welcome to experienced players and newer players as well. So, the way I was able to guarantee that everyone got a prize was, firstly, my venue hire cost was pretty cheap, very reasonable, together with a £15 ticket price, which I think was fair. For first you're getting a prize, and sometimes worth more than the £15. But also Warlord Games for Bolt Action do a fantastic prize support package. They do different tiers. For the first tournament, we did the first tier because it was a smaller tournament, and as we sold 18 tickets for this tournament, we were planning on doing 18, we were able to get the second tier of prizes. So that gives you some event-specific order dice, the event-specific figure for the year, which is really hard to get hold of, then a good mix of some smaller blister packs, some infantry kits, and then some certificates as well. I've got 2 of the generic ones that we didn't use on the day, using as a backdrop today, but they gave you one for first, second and third place, and most sporting in all the packs. And in the tier 2 pack, you get one for like best commander, best painted army, and most heroic action as well. So unfortunately, no plan survives contact with the enemy. I sold 18 tickets. A week before the event, I had 2 players. Sadly, so things had come up. It's absolutely fine. They dropped out. I decided to not resell those tickets because these tickets were sold 3 months ago. It's not enough notice time really, and I didn't want to sell just 1 ticket and then have to play myself. It's a lot on the day to organise, and I didn't want to have 3 opponents who were getting quite a rushed game as I try to play some Bolt Action as well as organising all the other games as well. And then it's November here in the UK at the moment, and it's a particularly rough COVID and flu season. So on the Friday evening and then on the actual morning of the event, I had a player each say they couldn't make it. They were absolutely gutted, but I think they made the right choice. You don't want to be spreading the germs around, particularly when you've got the order dice system. But also, they wouldn't necessarily feel up for it, and they just not enjoyed the event. So we had 14 players. We had 3 games to play for the day, and now I'm going to walk you through each scenario, which was specifically tailored for the event, with some influence from some community packs. The first round of the day was a scenario I called Control the Front. So it was corner deployments for both sides. You set up on the board, obviously, with then some units in reserve. And there was an objective in the middle of each quarter of the board. The way scoring worked was that at the end of every turn, starting from the second turn, you'd score 1 point for each objective in the neutral 2 corners you control, and then 2 points if you controlled the objective in your opponent's. Didn't score anything for the one in your own sector. You merely had to defend that. So again, encouraging people to move around the board, but not to just kind of be too aggressive. But a nice way to start the day. Moving on from this, at round 2, we had probably my favourite scenario to play in Bolt Action, called Shifting Priorities. I didn't come up with this scenario, but within it, you have 4 objectives in the middle of the board. And again, starting at the end of turn 2, you score 1 point for each objective that you capture. But the difference in this scenario is if you hold an objective, once you've scored it, your opponent gets to move it 6 inches within any direction. So it stops units just running onto the objective and hitting the dirt. You have to kind of keep following up your attack. It rewards early aggressive play, but you can't be too aggressive. Otherwise, your opponent can get the score back in round 4 and round 5, which is not what you want at all. The final scenario of the day was one I wanted to keep quite simple, as a lot of people are going to be quite tired after 2 games already. And it was a scenario called Bite and Hold. There's one objective in the middle where you score 2 points starting at the end of turn 2 if you control it, and then 1 point for each enemy order dice that you take off. So again, kill points, but with a bit of objective control, so not just a shoot them up. You still have to move around the board and seize an objective, but not in a way that you have to think too much, as this is quite a casual tournament. People are going to be quite tired by the end of the day, and just something nice and simple to kind of round off a really good day of Bolt Action. Even though it was a casual tournament, it would be rude of me not to mention the list that won the day ultimately, and that was James's Italians, surprisingly. It was quite a strong army of some light tank destroyers and then some paratroopers in these armoured trucks. The great thing about this list is he could really be quite aggressive with it. Most other armies only had 2 or 3 anti-tank guns, so simply by having more vehicles than they had anti-tank guns, it was kind of the player was able to overwhelm enemy lists quite early. But it would be interesting if there was some more heavy armour on the board, how we could deal with that, as these have only got light AT guns. But good to see something a little bit different win this tournament. And the way the prizes worked here, as I said earlier, was that everyone got a prize. So here's the prize table. Quite a nice array that we had available. Thank you again to Warlord for sending their second tier prize package to us. But we just tiered the placings as well as most sporting and best army. So that way the first place got their first pick of prizes. Then we moved to best army, most sporting, second, third, and just kind of made our way down the table there. No one got 2 prizes, just that way everyone got a prize, and just makes it a bit more enjoyable. Kind of takes the sting out of losing a little bit. It's kind of just a game in the end. I don't want to create something too competitive, but I think we did it before and it works really well this way. Probably needs to be a slightly different range of prizes. I'm maybe a little bit guilty of doing a lot of Allied and German stuff, not so much any minor Axis or Allies or Soviet or Japanese kits. Could also explore maybe some terrain or hobby supplies for those that feel like they already have enough on their pile of shame. But overall, would I do it again? Absolutely. It was interesting to do a slightly bigger tournament this time. I was a little bit more nervous than the first time, but it went really well. Obviously, there was a few hiccups with players not being able to turn up, but it was great to see some mates and club friends of mine turn up, as well as some people I've never met before. I know it can be a bit of a leap of faith, maybe, for people to turn up to an event like this in a random village hall. But thank you very much to everyone who came. What would I do differently? I'm probably not much. I like the scenarios. I think a couple of the boards, maybe the ones I supplied, maybe needed a little bit more terrain, a little bit more cover, and maybe I'd vary up the prize pool a little bit more, just so people don't have to get a box of soldiers if they don't want to. Maybe it's a building or some hedges or something like that. But yeah, there it is, a nice wrap up of a really fun day that was a few months into planning. But I'd certainly recommend those that are curious about running their own event to just go for it. You can do a kind of small 8-10 man tournament really easily. Warlord are fantastic around prize support. And I found it surprising, at least in my part of the UK, how many bolt action players there actually are that are just always looking for a place to play. I think in the club scene it's dominated a lot by Warhammer, but actually there's a lot of people who are looking to play what I think is a really, really fun 28mm miniatures game. That's Wargamer of Kent signing out.